stuff that we talked about in the seconds before you said going live didn't get recorded by anything.
I agree. I think people would enjoy it. Oh, well, yeah, I think they'd enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy it. So, anyway, so it's ThursdAGE, and what a beautiful day. It's a beautiful spring day. Well, at least here in Seattle it is. It's nice and sunny even.
We're almost summer-like. We got it over 90 yesterday.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, now, are you still doing that whole, like, hey, it's summer. Oh, my gosh, it's winter.
Well, so... Welcome to Oklahoma, where the Severe Storms Laboratory is in my hometown for a reason. So we've had lows as low as 32 and highs as high as 91 all in the past week. In the next week, we're going to have highs not quite as high, 85, and lows as low as 40. So we're going to have a 45-degree swing back and forth from day to day, and this weekend that's supposed to result in severe thunderstorms. Right now, we just have wind advisories, which, by the way, if I disappear, folks, it's because a tree line went down.
Wow. Well, here's the thing. We are talking today about Easter eggs in your adventures with meteorologist Owen Casey Stevens.
Anyone who's lived in Norman or in Oklahoma for most of their life is a little bit of a meteorologist.
Oh, I bet. Plus, you have that laboratory cooking up all that nasty weather.
Yeah. Well, we have the best severe weather in the country as a result of the Severe Storms Laboratory. Occasionally, it gets out. You have your occasional Sharknado and Barracuda cane and
sure, Barracuda cane, simian-based, particulates. Let me see. Duke says, hello, everyone. Temperature swing, ThursdAGE Duke ready and standing by.
Excellent. I like ready and standing by. It makes you sound really alert and prepared and yet not pushy.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of a light a presence, but yet there and ready and standing by. Well, yeah. I like that. And I like that, Owen, you're ready and standing by because you come to us every Thursday, you hang out, you give us all of this great information. And today, Easter eggs in your adventures, not unlike, I'll say, the Easter egg hiding behind this modesty shield.
That's not really an Easter egg. If anyone cared what that painting was, right, that would be an Easter egg.
Oh, well, but we don't know what's inside that egg-shaped cranium.
Chocolate. It's all chocolate, I assure you. and hollow chocolate too. It's not the good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So it's that hollow milk chocolate.
Yeah. There might be some, I don't know, nougat, whatever that is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. I like the art behind you. You look fantastic. So Owen, this was your idea, and I love it. It's evocative. People go, "Oh yeah, Easter eggs," because pop culture is riddled with Easter eggs, and to the point now where people are like, "Gotta stay after that movie to get that Easter egg." It's there. I'm not sure if that's an Easter egg anymore, but
Stan thinks I was filled with Cadbury cream. That would be nice if I was filled with Cadbury cream. That's a higher end, or even Twix with a cookie center would be all right. Yeah. So staying after the credits for the post or mid credit scene sort of used to be an Easter egg. Like there's an after credit scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the movie, and there are people who don't know that. And because you don't know that, and it's not expected, and you have to look to find it, it is an Easter egg. Now, it's an incredibly minor Easter egg. It's just a cute little stinger at the end. He literally says, "Movie's over, go home." But if you stayed for all the credits, you got to see that. Now, I used to stay for... I'm not watching movies in theaters at the moment, but I used to stay for all the credits because there are some fabulous names in the credits that your eye can just be drawn to, right? I mean... Avery Strongmason, and I'm like, oh wow, Avery Strongmason, that's an awesome name. And you're by that time you're talking about the 14th best key grip boy rigger,
right?
But I like cool names, so it was a good way to. I would literally take a notebook sometime with me. So that's why I saw the Ferris Bueller's Day Off Easter egg. In like Iron Man, the first Iron Man Marvel movie, that was an Easter egg because everyone didn't know to wait for it.
Right.
In the first prequel Star Wars movie, where you hear Darth Vader breathing and it's like 2 seconds long, that's an Easter egg. Now, everyone knows Marvel movies have Easter eggs, and they know that other modern movies, especially action, adventure, comedy movies, might have, well, not Easter eggs, stingers at the end.
Yeah.
Mid or post-credit scenes. So I think those have really moved out of the Easter egg category. But the term, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring it to gaming, is that the term Easter egg for a little hidden nugget in a pop culture media for consumption actually originates in gaming. It originates in video gaming, as people who have seen the movie Ready Player One should all be aware, because it's a plot point, that the very first thing to be called an Easter egg was a credit for the lead programmer or designer of the Atari video game Adventure, because Atari didn't like to credit their creators. They didn't want their creators being poached. They didn't want them being more famous. Jonesy knows it's an adventure. So he, without telling Atari, put created by in his name in the adventure, but you had to hover over one specific pixel. This is Warren Robinette. And if you hover over that pixel on that screen, it shows up. It's a secret room.
I love that.
When it was discovered, there was a move within Atari to maybe re-release the game, take in all the old ones, and remove his credit, and that was considered too costly. So the director of software development, Steve Wright, at Atari said, hey, why don't we keep the message, and we can actually encourage the inclusion of such messages in future games as Easter eggs for consumers to find. That the whole idea was that if there was something that would cause people to spend more time with the game, that they knew hovering over every single pixel might well get you something that could give people at a high level of engagement an opportunity to discover something and feel special and spend more time with it and want to buy more stuff. And so that's where the whole Easter egg thing started.
Yeah. Now, real quick, I wanted to add, I was an Easter egg in a video game.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was a fresco painted in in the catacombs in a pirate game, and I was also a pirate ghost where they took my face and photoshopped it into, and I haunted a ship. So yeah. So this is a very important topic to me as an Easter egg.
So Easter eggs fall into a few different categories. Stan notes that modern mid and post-credit scenes are teasers or super early advertising, not Easter eggs. And I would say that he's right about modern ones. I think they were originally Easter eggs for the reasons I outlined.
Take that.
Easter eggs fall into a few different categories, which I think are worth discussing. One of them is the out of continuity Easter egg that is for you, the media consumer, and exists outside of the continuity of the media you are producing. So, for example, if you're playing Adventure, which is supposedly about wandering around and killing things in a dungeon, you don't, in character, expect that if I stepped on a particular rock, a created by sign would show up within the continuity of that adventure. You are well aware that, okay, actually, that is something that was put in by the creator. It is a meta thing. It is outside the continuity of the media I'm absorbing. Examples of that are, for example, in the Well of Souls and Raiders of Lost Ark, in the hieroglyphs, there are hieroglyphs of R2-D2 and C-3PO. And they're just part of the background, just people there having fun. You can spot it if you pause and you wait long enough. Most people agree that does not mean that Lucasfilm was claiming that R2-D2 and C-3PO, who after all are from long, long ago, somehow ended up in ancient Egypt and got painted into the Well of Souls, right? Most people acknowledge, okay, that's out of continuity. That's just a cute little thing. And it being back there is something that doesn't impact the flow of the story, right? We don't find out about R2-D2 and C-3PO being around later. We don't see Indy doesn't get out because there's a destroyed droid. He can start a fire by sparking 2 sparks. It is entirely outside of the narrative. And even within that, there's some different examples. The reason I bring this up is that is the sort of thing that can be a lot of fun for passive consumption media, movies, and even to a certain extent video games, but not necessarily a lot of fun for tabletop role-playing games. If you say, hey, make a perception test, and someone makes it, and you say, hey, you see this credit for me having written this dungeon, right? That would be the equivalent, and it doesn't really work. Another form of Easter egg is sort of the foreshadowing Easter egg, although it can also be a callback. If you think about the Lord of the Rings movies, there's a scene where you can see the trolls that were turned to stone by Bilbo keeping them distracted till the sun came up. That doesn't affect the actual continuity of the Lord of the Rings. It doesn't matter that that's where they're camping. They could be anywhere. They don't necessarily talk about it. It's not relevant. But it is a leftover from an event that people watching that movie knew occurred. And of course, they eventually did a Hobbit movie. And so they created that scene that led to it. This can be more fun, but you've got to be careful as a GM adding those things to your adventures, because anything that is massively interesting, noteworthy, or out of place tends to be a magnet for players to focus on. And if you don't intend for them to focus on it, you may not want to waste everyone's time with them trying to figure out, okay, why is the GM telling us that there are 3 stone troll statues here? Is there a Medusa around? Should we be digging these up for loot? Et cetera, et cetera. For example, in some previous editions of fantasy role-playing games, there was an item called a folding boat, which was literally a boat that you could fold down. And I was playing in a game where we came across in a dungeon, not a folding boat, but a full 40-foot long Viking longship just jammed sideways in a corridor. And we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, is this a folding boat? Is there a button or a catch or a twist? Can we poke the dragon's eyes or take down the sail or say a command word? It turns out that it was there because that GM, having run that dungeon for a different group of players, at one point was annoyed that one of the players seemed to be ignoring encumbrance rules and said, let me look at your character sheet. What all do you have written down? And discovered that player had written down a full-sized gnar as a piece of equipment in his backpack. And so the GM declared, okay, it might have been in there before, but it pops out now and it wedges in place and you all have to crawl over it. And anytime that GM ran that dungeon for a new group, he always had that ship jammed in there. As a story, it's funny. As a player who runs into it, it is if it's not actually connected to anything, especially when it's that bizarre and weird, it really leads you to being distracted from the fun of the game. It's okay for a game to have mysteries, right? It's fine if you say, hey, the sky turned gold for 15 minutes this morning and then turned back to blue, and no one knows why. Even as a GM, if you have no intention of telling people, but if you know, and how people react to that is going to be one of the themes you want to talk about. If you want to say this is a world where strange things happen sometimes, current active theory is that someone somewhere cast a spell that tried to literally make the sky into gold and they just got the color. So that you give the players a interaction option with it. But you don't necessarily want to add things that is going to suck up a bunch of their time and attention if it's not something you have any intention of dealing with. This is different from set dressing, right? If we'd been going along and we had found, hey, there are 2 humanoid skeletons. They're pretty well picked over. There's some tatters of cloth, but it looks like anything of value from them is missing. And they both have a bunch of holes in their head that might have been created by a pike or arrows. As a player, you go, okay, people have been in here before and something killed them. That set dressing isn't an Easter egg because it's not totally unexpected, and it isn't something that is disconnected from the continuity of the world. It makes sense that those things are there. You can turn those things into Easter eggs if, for example, you note, yeah, there's not much of anything here, except that the very tattered surcoat that one of them is having has a 3-headed griffin symbol on it. Someone just says, oh, it's a 3-headed griffin symbol. And then later you have someone say, this expedition, you're being hired to see if you can find the burial place of good king insignia, whose heraldry was a 3-headed griffin. And then you have turned that bit of set dressing from earlier into an Easter egg, especially if people took notes. You can also do it the other way around, right? You can say, that there are people wandering around looking for Good King Insignia's burial place. You all don't happen to be on that mission, and then have them find it. And if they ask, well, what would we know about him? Does anyone have an appropriate lore? Can we make a knowledge test? They can find it even though they're not looking at it. So you can make connections like that to make these things interesting. And you can go either way. You can give them the lore and then connect it to something, or you can add something and then they find out later, oh, that was relevant. That can even be a fun reason, for example, that you might go back to a place. When I'm making set-based adventures, and I've put a lot of effort, for example, into, I've mapped out this ziggurat that sits on top of this dungeon, and there are constantly cultists trying to get the ziggurat to move so they can get down into the dungeon and release their evil god. If I have made terrain and I've mapped it out and I've named it and I've got some pictures of it, I may want the players to go back there more than once. So I may add some details like, hey, there's amongst other things here, there is the Rune of Negation, which is a very powerful rune that none of you are powerful enough to know how to use. You just recognize it. They're not very common. And then you can later have them get a curse and say, well, this curse could be removed, but only by a ritual performed at a Rune of Negation. And they're like, oh, wait, didn't we have a Rune of Negation? Yeah, there's one at that place. And then you have a reason for them to go back there. And then whoever cursed them might also know, the only place I know of a Rune of Negation where the curse could be lifted is here, so we'll set up an ambush. And it is dropping little details that make sense, that aren't horrifically distracting, can give you something to build on, that can lead to interesting things further on. You still want to be careful about how much time is spent on these sort of plot-relevant Easter eggs. I've got a player, my friend Carl, who I've been playing with for, I think we're coming up on 40 years now of regular gaming with him. He keeps notes on everything in a game, just flipping everything. Really? And yes, he's a note taker. And as a GM, that's a huge boon when you want people to interact with the world. The flip side of it is that sometimes his notes are better than mine. As a famous example, I at one point had a campaign where there was an incredibly powerful form of artifact known as Waters of Life, and people would have little vials of Waters of Life. And I was setting up a plot, so a junior druid who is a member of the party, who was a player character, got a small vial of Waters of Life and was told, hey, this is important. Don't give it to anyone unless it's really important. It's your job to keep it safe. And the player made a note, and I made a note, and Carl made a note. The player dutifully transferred that note from character sheet to character sheet as they leveled. I totally forgot about it. Fast forward to several real world years later, the characters have gained many, many, many levels. I have totally forgotten that I ever came out of Vial, but it's still in my lore notes that this is a thing that happens. So at one point, I set the players up so that they needed the help from someone, that they could only get that help with the Waters of Life. And it was well known that the only known vial of Waters of Life was in another country, beyond a dungeon, with guards and traps and sigils and glyphs. And I had a whole adventure set up. And Carl's character was the one who went and talked to them and discovered that they could not get this person's help without Waters of Life. And that they were aware of this quest, and that they thought that this person had the player characters had maybe a 50-50 chance of surviving this dangerous quest. And when you come back in 3, 4, 5 months and you're done and you've got it, then we will be able to help you. And instead, Carl's character went outside, went to the original PC and said, hey, Gwen, you still have those Waters of Life that you picked up 5 years ago? And that player was like, yeah, it's still here in my character sheet. And I was like, what waters of life on your character sheet? And Carl was like, so in 1995, on this date, you had this character be given waters of life by this character. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, I did. Yeah. So that written down? Yeah, sure do. Great. So Carl's character takes the waters of life, walks back in, having just left on what was supposed to be a 5-month quest, and says, here, now will you help us? That, in a way, was an Easter egg that got me, right? I was trying to seed future plot points, and having forgotten about them, an entire adventure was bypassed. Now, being a creative GM, I rather than throw all that work out, I just, when they said, hey, can you help us overcome this evil? They were told, yes, we can help you overcome this evil. We will need the Sword of Dawn, which is found in this far country and beyond these dungeons and these traps. And so none of that was lost. But when you are putting in continuity relevant Easter eggs, you want your notes to be at least as good as the players. The flip side of that is sometimes you can just sprinkle things in, and if you take notes, you can go back to them later. You can say, hey, I remember mentioning that this particular person made the best cheese toast in the world, and now I'm going to have them run into a fairy who is really, really hot on cheese toast, and hopefully the players will remember, wait, we ran into a guy and we thought he made the best cheese toast ever. And then it's not that you are adding a detail with the intention of connecting it in the future, but you're turning it into an Easter egg by having something go back and hook to it in the past. The next kind of Easter egg is what I tend to think of as rules Easter eggs. These are things that people in the game industry put in game books or in video games, like I'm going to use my friend's face for this ghost pirate. Those, as long as you don't have to know they're an Easter egg for them to work, I think is a fine way to add things. You just want to be careful that you don't put in things that are so cute and disconnected that they obviously take away the feeling of verisimilitude from the players. So, for example, guys are talking about ghosts in chat, and I feel like there's a totally unrelated Easter egg to my conversation.
It's sort of it's related. It's a little Easter eggy. We're building lore.
Fair. So if you decide, hey, I'm going to use an old character of mine as the villain for this campaign, and if anyone remembers them, they'll go, oh, wait, wasn't that your character from that other game? And you're like, yeah, they went bad. Now they're the villain. But the players don't have to know that. If they never make that connection, everything goes through fine. The flip side of that is that if you decide in your fantasy game, the main villains are going to be an insane chemist, alchemist that has laughing fog bombs, and a inquisitor, half of his face has been horribly scarred by acid, and he flips a coin to do what decision he's going to make, and a were penguin, and a cat shaman, and you are creating Batman villains as the lineup. When the players encounter that, it's fine if they don't recognize it, because each individually are valid concepts for a fantasy game. But if they go, oh, wait, you've just stolen the entire Batman villainous group for the villains of this campaign, and now this game feels more like a joke than a serious game.
So, the other thing that I love that you mentioned, a lot of Easter eggs that you run into or that you hear about classic Easter eggs, it'll open up a whole new game or a whole new world. You do that kind of stuff. But I think it's important to not acknowledge the difference between those sort of non sequiturs and how that derails immersion and problem solving and all that stuff around the table. I mean, people could suddenly you're like in an 80s arcade playing Galaga. People are going to say, yeah, I'm not feeling this.
And the time that those work super well is when you get player buy-in to begin with, right? So if you say, hey, I'm going to run a fantasy age game where you all are in a mushroom kingdom and there's a dragon turtle in charge of everything, and you're going to fight centipedes and Martians to go as they go by in the sky, and I'm going to steal all this stuff from 80 arcades, and I want your characters to be based on Rastan and characters from Gauntlet, and the players are into that, then it becomes a theme rather than an Easter egg, because it's not hidden, it's up front. And you can then put in Easter eggs by having something like, hey, I'm borrowing this. You're attacked by a giant ampersand that kind of looks like a dragon, and people are like, oh, that's the dragon from Adventure, but it's also an ampersand from Dungeons and Dragons. I get it. But if they don't get it, again, you can go forward. So it's all about trying to put these together in a way that they enhance rather than distract from the game. There's nothing wrong with your players wanting to think you are clever, but you want them to think you are clever about things that make the game more fun, rather than think you're clever because you spent up half an hour making the dungeon look like a giant raised middle finger from a punk sorcerer, unless that is appropriate in your campaign world.
Well, and it's also about helping them feel clever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yeah, I mean that's a big part of that whole Easter egg thing. It feels like that it's a discovery you have made, and you feel like, oh, great, I see this and I get it. Now I'm in on the joke, and or I'm in on this moment, and it's really enough cleverness for all.
And that actually brings me to one of the things that I only thought about today, actually, as a result of interacting with some other people about concerns they had in various RPG tropes. And that is that there is such a thing as the mean-spirited Easter egg. For example, if there is someone in your community that you all feel is socially awkward, and you decide, I am going to make this joke character that everyone hates, and they're going to look like and sound like and act like this person we actually know, and we can all laugh about it. Just because you're putting it in a game does not make it any less mean-spirited. I mention this because I have actually run into that, right? I have run into games where people picked someone that they thought everyone at the table didn't like and made them a villain in one form or another, and a caricature of themselves, so that as part of the game process, the idea was that the players and the GM would all laugh at this person. Now, that sounds and is horrible, but there are lesser versions of that people might not think about, like if there are specific movie tropes or specific religious trends or specific fashion styles that you personally dislike, and you decide to hang on your campaign world as within that world objectively bad, you need to really think about why you're doing that and what the possible consequences of it are. I for example, have no problem saying, okay, these villains are going to seem very much like fascists, and they are evil in the way that fascism is evil, and you all will probably feel pretty comfortable punching them in the face. I am good with saying that even within the game context, but I would not mostly want to mock other people's religious beliefs or philosophical beliefs, or even ones I disagree with. I maybe if I'm punching up, right? But it's very easy when you're the GM to sort of be in control of how everything in a world is presented, which allows you to very easily punch down on people who have no say in what is set up in your campaign world, or what the king looks like, and what the favored fried dragon flavor is, or whatever. The less important something is, and the more you are public about it, the less I'm worried about sort of mocking it in game, right? If you personally think that Kentucky Fried Chicken tastes terrible, I don't, but if you did, and you had a dragon named Kentucky, and he kept frying things, and people would eat anything he fried, but the players all know it tastes terrible, that is both, the corporation is not going to be hurt by you taking a swing at them. Hopefully, no one is going to think that you believe your personal opinion being different from theirs means you think they are bad people. And if you're in a comedy game where that sort of pun is appropriate, fine. My wife ran a game where puns were literally magical, where wordplay gave you magic powers, and the game was presented to us as a silly comedy game where having puns and wordplay and jokes would be a form of arcane power. And at one point, our characters got lost, and we found a tribe, and the tribe was willing to help us, but they warned us the only way they could help us was that they had this golden covered frog like creature that moved very, very fast, and we would have to run after it because if we lost sight of it, we wouldn't get to our end destination. We were like, okay, what? And they all started chanting, follow the yellow quick toad, follow the yellow quick toad, follow, follow, follow. Because that was a comedy game, even though that's sort of mocking Munchkins at a specific moment in Oz, it was thematically appropriate. We'd already run into explosive water elementals that were hydrogens. The whole game was set up like that, and we bought into that at the beginning. I think those are all important elements of making comedy, silliness, non sequiturs work. If you had wanted to have a giant ship lodged into a dungeon somewhere, one of the ways you can handle that is have the players show up and it's lodged in there, and you, the GM, say, look, I know it's weird. This is what happened. I love having it here, but you guys don't have to worry about it. That does somewhat distract from the game, but if it's an occasional one-off thing, if it's your homage to the fact that a friend of yours used to keep a gnar in his backpack, fine. Just don't both present reality as objective and internally making sense and requiring players to interact with it as if they were really there and expect them to be okay with something that they have absolutely no power over that's obviously weird, and then add stuff from outside that reality's continuity that is going to distract.
Right. Owen, I'm thinking about that now. Duke shares. This is phenomenal. A Fantasy Age campaign I ran, basically a slightly modded reimagining of a JRPG that all of them had played when they were young, but they didn't know until they started going through it. That's brilliant. That kind of stuff is super fun, especially with a group of friends. And I'm thinking about that. You're in the dungeon, you come across, why is this ship in here like this? I would be compelled as a GM to have almost like an area where each of the parties that have played this map end up leaving something interesting or odd as a museum to their, kind of the stuff that went on, an homage to them. That I think would be the Easter egg, just kind of non sequitur boat because, the GM was being funny or being punitive. That lacks, I think, of some of the Easter egg magic, but making it, I like that a lot.
I played in a game, a fantasy role-playing game, where one of the things that we picked up fairly early was a wand of sunlight. And it was described to us as a fairly thick wand, and there was a special gesture that caused it to project a cone of light, but it could only store so much sunlight, so it also came with a plate, and when the sun was out, you had to put it on the plate in the sunlight so it could store more sunlight. It was not until we had played that game for a couple of years that we realized this was a post-apocalyptic setting, and what we had was a flashlight with a solar panel.
Right. I love it.
And literally, it's a flashlight, and we have to plug it into the solar panel. It was a contactless, right? You just put it on top, put it in the sun. But it was presented to us in the way our characters saw it. And, we realized, oh, wait, probably that one guy that had that thunder staff with the alchemical explosions, that was a shark stick and shotgun shells. But because everything, most of it was like a sort of Shannara kind of post-apocalypse, where it was a long time ago, and the vast majority of that has been scrubbed away. And it was just a little background element, and everything was presented to us in a way that made sense to our characters. So even when we discovered it, it was just a background element, like discovering about the war between the gods and the Titans. It wasn't, oh, wait, we've been idiots this whole time because we didn't know what a flashlight was. Well, our characters wouldn't be expected to, and the GM didn't expect us to figure out that the gesture was flicking on a switch, right? It was just described within the context of that fantasy world.
I really love that. I also want to say hey to the great Rafiki who says, happy ThursdAGE, everyone. That reminds me real quick. I just wanted to throw in here, tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, we've got a live stream happening. It's an actual play. It is Ian Lemke running a Beyond the Rings actual play with our streamers that very good friends of ours. We have Abraxas Precipice and we have Fresh Out the Box, and they will be part of the cast. It's going to be a blast. And so I want to share that real quick. I'm reminded because, Rafiki, the great, is also a streamer. And I'm going to pull that information up and share that with the world here in just a bit. We'll drop a link. And Rafiki, if you've got something on your fingertips, feel free to get there before I do. But our streaming is going gangbusters. Lots of age-based streaming to be done. Hey, D, good to see you as well. Always like it when D pops by. Yeah, so D is like a little Easter egg.
Well,
Always sharing it cracks me up. Yeah,
people can be Easter eggs. You were mentioning that you were in a couple of video games. I had a friend use my image as a major character in a RPG adventure, and had me in scholar's robes and a floppy hat. And because he knows that my wife can sew, and he's a friend, sadly passed now. He talked to her and made sure that if I wanted to, she could make the robe and buy the hat. So if the character were better known, it would be my immediate go-to cosplay, right? Because I can put on the silly little hat, wear the scholar's robes. I'm a dead ringer for this guy because a picture of me was used as his art reference. For that matter, BJ Hensley put a version of me into one of her adventures involving a happy little bee, and there's a more cartoony version of me. Stan does a lot of cartoons that has obviously the caricature version of Owen, and again, for people who recognize, oh, that's Owen, that's a little perhaps Easter egg, but the cartoons are funny and interesting just with a plus size bearded geek doing whatever is being done.
Yeah, so I love that. And D, how would we know? D says I don't think I made it. We can't be sure, and so we will doubt that. But also, Rafiki shares that they'll do their second season of a show using the H system, and that the Expanse one shot's happening next Friday, and that's the one I'm talking about. So we'll share a link there. Let's see here. I want. I'm not sure how I'd feel about that because you just closed the book and shut me up. I love the idea of Owen the Sage being a recurring NPC in adventures, especially if Troy's the disembodied voice of his spell book.
I mean, if you want to do that, you've got a couple of options. One is for the spell book to be able to project its voice whether it's open or closed. The other, as a GM, if you want to make it an interesting dynamic, is you've got the wizard and you've got the spell book. The spell book is constantly going, actually, and the wizard closes it, and then you start hearing
art imitating life.
Exactly that. So and Stan has the picture that he did of me in a BJ Hensley adventure, which he posted to Facebook. Did he post it? Yeah, that you've got. So if you want to share that up,
there now, love it. Now, Owen, as people who work in these spaces, we oftentimes, because of our notoriety, this is great. A bee. Okay, here, let me see. I'm going to download this. But I'm
the portly scholar with glasses in that picture, not the bee.
I like it. I'm going to share it, and so in addition to this, have you had other people sort of incorporate something about you in game mechanisms or any? I mean, that kind of stuff happens quite a bit, and I actually really love it. I mean, it's something that even if it's a little poking a little fun, there's that sort of fine line between something that people enjoy and it's a clever, we're all in on it, and something that is mean. I
mean, a lot of things start that way in my experience, and then again, being professionals, they get developed and considered and modified. Yeah, there is cartoon bee friendly Stan drawn version of me, and I do look much younger without the beard, and that's supposed to be a young character. So there's a picture of me floating around the internet. I posted it a few times from my time in the 1996 or 1997 TSR Writers Workshop, before I had one thing published, but I don't think so. And I'm sitting at the far end of a table going, and I refer to that as the Mole King picture, right? Because I'm big-eyed and I'm doing this, and I'm like, if this mole person can get published in an RPG, so can you. So sometimes being reminded of what we used to look like isn't hysterical, and sometimes it is. But again, you want to be kind with people about that.
Right. I say go lightly. Yeah.
And we have a actual cartoon from Stand, a new one.
Nice. I'm
First-
on the
same
download
place.
now. Okay, so talk to me a bit about preparing and deploying, and these. I think one of the things that you mentioned that I thought was pretty important is that you don't want to have the Easter egg be something that they must know about, or something gets blocked or stopped, or like.
Yeah, you don't want player knowledge that is separate from character knowledge to be mandatory for a character to move forward in something. Now, if you are doing an adventure that is sort of, if Ready Player One was to you the most awesome thing ever, and you are running a modern age game, and in this modern age game, people are actually on an Easter egg hunt because some billionaire has put something important, and you're only going to be able to get there if you recognize where Ba Weep Grana Weep Ninibum came from and know a flux capacitor from a photon torpedo. You could do that, but again, you got to ask yourself, how will the characters know this information, and how will I get it to them? And if a player knows something that they think their characters wouldn't, how do I handle that? I am not super strict about player knowledge versus character knowledge, in that I want everything to flow smoothly and be fun. So, for example, if someone says, okay, I'm going to stand here with my bow because that will give me a crossfire with this other player who has a ranged mage bolt. I don't immediately say, hey, how does your character know what a crossfire is? Do you have any military background to make a perception test for the battlefield, right? That's just general, okay, I've got some experience, I'm going to put it to this. But the flip side of that is that if they have to recognize that the five-fingered throwing star called a glaive might look like a crusty starfish when you first run into it in a pool of lava, and I haven't set this game up where all the characters and players have a ton of Krull lore, then I'm not only creating a fail point, but I'm creating a fail point that is telling the players this reality is subject to my whims more than it is to the logic of any specific continuity.
Right. That is a point well made, and I think an important one to boot. In addition to this beautiful piece of art,
King Tarv sits on his throne, guarded by his pet lion, Tarson. Hey, wasn't that the name of your first cat? Congratulations, you found the Easter egg. And right, he's being guarded, but this is a perfect example. He's being guarded by a pet lion. All the players have to do is interact with the pet lion. If someone happens to know that your first pet lion was named Tarson, now you got to be careful with that. My most beloved pet ever was a cat named Cortez. If I were to have someone have a giant black lion next to him named Cortez, there are things that players would know about the behavior of that animal based on being familiar with my cat and my love for that cat. The fact that he was a grumpy biter that only loved about 3 people in the whole world and attacked everyone else for no flipping reason. So, even with something as simple as I named this lion after my cat, you got to be careful. Duke says I will now have a physical Easter egg behind my screen at all times. Yeah, and
just in case. An Easter egg.
I kind of love the idea of having a little plastic Easter egg, maybe full of gummy bears, that if someone finds an Easter egg that I've planned, I will pass it out to them, because then the event is out of character. Hey, isn't that your name of your first cat? And the reward is out of character. Okay, you get an egg, we all laugh, have some jelly beans.
The balance maintained, right.
Yeah, balance is maintained. I have always said I'm not a fan of trying to fix in-character problems with out-of-character solution. I'm also not a big fan of rewarding in-character actions with real-world, out-of-character rewards or benefits. That's a little fuzzier because, if the reward is, hey, you've proven that you can play a complex character that I might not trust someone else with, but you've done it before and it wasn't disruptive to the game, then you've earned my trust to do a thing, and that reward is a little different from saying, hey, your character's spells were all based on books I wrote as a game master, so I'm going to give you an extra spell per day as long as it's funny. Right? That is a different kind of in and out of character reward system that I wouldn't want to impose on anything.
Gotcha. Yeah, and Jonesy brings up something interesting. Context. We kind of talk a bit about this. Like, where are you? What's the
Yep.
vibe? What's the mood? What's the thing? And and even what is the game? How is it different? How is it fit? And so Jonesy's talking about the having DC adventures, running DC adventures at Gen Con, and putting bits of the DC lore into the game that isn't necessarily needed. But I see the conventions as just a perfect place for that kind of fun.
It is, although again, you want to be clear with people up front what you're doing. Now, systems with hero points, where the hero points call out that if someone makes everyone at the table laugh, or they make the game go along better, or right, the hero points are an explicitly in-game mechanism for character rather than player action. I think that can be a nice social lubricant to keep the game going and to remind everyone that we're here to help everyone have fun. So if you're helping everyone have fun, we will give you more hero tokens so that you can have an easier time helping everyone have fun. And that is sort of an exception to my rule, which is why I said it's a little wibblier wobblier than trying to fix in-campaign problems with out-of-campaign solutions.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. So is there I'm trying to think about, generally I have seen Easter eggs, and they're kind of winky. They're a sort of a punish thing, or not punish, but of the puns. And they are, there's some humor. Are there Easter eggs that are more serious, less sort of like, is there space for that kind of emotional variety when it comes to Easter eggs?
I think there is. You just have to be careful, because emotional impact and even level of seriousness varies between people. I was one of the original design leads on the Starfinder role-playing game, and in that game there is a soldier class, and that class has a fighting style for powered armor. And one of the powers that I gave them was something called On the Bounce, which allowed you to move faster and more easily in powered armor. Now, if you are in no way connected to the source material I took that thing from, you can say, oh, on the bounce, bouncing along, jumping, I can kind of see it. But that is very specifically a phrase from Starship Troopers, which is one of the very early successful military sci-fi books focusing on powered armor. So if you're a fan of powered armor and you're flipping through this book and you're like, I want to play someone in powered armor, here's powered armor. Oh, there's an ability called On the Bounce. One of the things that immediately tells you is that someone who is involved in the creation of this book is also a fan of Starship Troopers. The fact that particular phrase, right. I consider that an Easter egg. The reason I think that Easter eggs works is that it is a useful game term to have a phrase that relates to an ability, but is not likely to come up in casual conversation, right? Like, Monty Cook has often said that one of his mistakes when he was making the 3rd edition D&D Dungeon Master's Guide was to have an NPC class called the Warrior. Because the problem there was that suddenly there were very few words you could generically use to describe people who were likely to fight. If you say warriors, people think that they're a warrior NPC class. If you say fighter, people think that they are specifically the fighter class. If you say cavalier, they think they are specifically have the cavalier prestige class, etc. So having something like On the Bounce, yes, it's an Easter egg, but it also means if someone says, I use my On the Bounce power, everyone realizes they are referring to the name of a game power, because that phrase makes sense. You understand that it's linked to mobility and powered armor, but you're not going to be using it just in your everyday conversation, like if you called it Must Go Faster, which would still be a Easter egg to Jurassic Park, but people are more likely to say Must Go Faster, especially since that catchphrase sort of showed up for a while. I'm dating myself here, but
I love it. There is, let me see here real fast. Okay, this is going to take a second. We have, how much time do we have left? 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
How the heck did that happen?
You let me talk.
True. That is what this whole thing is about, letting you talk.
And literally, when we were talking about this topic, and you said if I felt good with it, my response was, "Yeah, I can fill an hour with that."
Yeah, absolutely. And if we've almost filled it completely. We do live streams on a regular basis, and we are very much interested in people who are also live streaming. And every day I find a new person who's kind of doing a thing. And what's interesting is I think that tabletop role play publishers are uniquely interested in what goes on around the table. I think more so they, whether it's because we've got more capacity or because it's such a medium where you are building relationships and connecting with people. Video games maybe not as connective as tabletop role play. So if you are out there and you're doing a stream, we want to know about it. Even if it's a one shot, let us know ahead of time so that we can, maybe we'll do some prizing. Maybe we will, maybe we'll bundle up Owen in his little bee suit and buzz him right over, and he'll hang out with you and, and be the guest of the evening, the NPC of the night, how that may be. I mean, you wouldn't mind that, would you, Owen?
Oh no. It I did not set out to have a career in role-playing games. I just happened to love role-playing games that during the time I should have been learning useful and marketable skills, I just played games. So this is the only saleable skill I've got, so I had to make a career out of it. But the upshot of that is that I like playing games. I like role-playing games. I like video games. If you want to have me on to play Parcheesi, that is a conversation I'm happy to have. I did a big long stream with Param from No Direction at one point, which was he and I playing one of the old D&D video games through Steam and talking about how bad we were at it, and then just having a conversation. And that was a very popular stream, in large part because we were both so bad at the game.
Well, and that's the fun of it. And I will say that if you are maybe you thought, I'd never do a stream, or you're starting to get that feeling like you want to, do it. Go out there and have fun. Bring new people to the table, and let us know when you do that, because we'd like to support those things, and we do so aggressively. Not really aggressively, I'd say, but I mean, a light
with barbaric yops. Yeah, we leap from the rooftop and scream, "Stream!"
That's what we do, and we land right in your living room.
I just know now that when you upload this on YouTube, the thumbnail is going to be me going.
It's gonna, sometimes the procedural, when it just picks the perfect one. Other times I'm like, we're gonna go a couple frames right or left on that. Yeah. So speaking of streams, that we've got, we've got so many streams going on, I can't even count. We've got our Expanse stream for Beyond the Ring that's happening tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific. 5 p.m. Pacific, and what is that? 5, 6, 7, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then we have got what else do we have cooking? We have we do Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and that's basically a bunch of superheroes just hanging out, just chilling, talking about what's like living as a superhero. Crystal Frazier, super heroine, and Steve Kenson, superhero, and then Alex Thomas, who is also super, and myself, which is I'm just semi super, and we talk all about a semi super. Yeah,
I think you're quite. I mean, you're the only person there with a superpower. You're disembodied.
Ooh, that's true. Is that a power though? I mean, I guess
I mean, look, if I stub my toe, I'm gonna wish I was disembodied.
That is very true. Very true.
Although I guess if you stub your id, that's not a whole lot better.
No, and I'm doing that daily on the regular. So we've got that cooking, and then we've got some ideas rolling around for some actual plays that are a little bit more serious and some fun ones. We will be collaborating with streamers. We got just a ton of stuff going on, so do keep an eyeball on our wherever you're at right now. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe, whatever that thing is that they do there. Is it stars? Give us all of them. If it's thumbs, hand them over. All of those, give them to us.
And click the bell so you'll get notifications.
That's right. Give it a little tickle, tickle, and then
I've been watching
also
way too many YouTube videos recently.
I can tell. I can tell. And I love it. The other thing that you want to do is leave a comment. Say, hey, I love you. Say
Maybe,
that with earnestness.
maybe don't say that. Yeah. I mean, if you do, sure. I'm happy to normalize expressions of affection and love between people in a non-romantic sense. That's fine.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah.
did you see that Dee asked if she does an unboxing and a review of a Green Run books? Is there a place she can send the link? Because I think
There
that's
sure
yeah.
is, Dee. I'm sorry, we got all wrapped up in being funny. Dee, you do me a favor here, and anyone else interested, but Dee, you're first in line. Send a note to let's play at greenronin.com, and we will promptly, I mean, in a manner of speaking, respond and get you hooked up. Absolutely, we would love to amplify the work that you're doing and connect. So for sure. Let's see. Oh, Brian, you made it. We have been. You've been. Brian's been diligently for 54 minutes trying to log in, and at least you caught the best part of the show.
The best part. The best. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that is to say that we've all gone on a journey together. We've spent some quality time unpacking this topic, and I think we've learned a thing or two about ourselves.
Wouldn't we be cracking this topic since it's Easter eggs?
I know. Shoot, I did kind of wear that a little thin, but yes.
I thought you were good.
Thank you. Yeah, and as far as this topic goes, I think it is a good one, and I think it is something that it is an opportunity to think about some of these pop culture facets and how to adequately, sort of address them and engage them and not do so in a way that is offensive or, yeah, we help you navigate that kind of stuff here on ThursdAGE while Owen says, I'm sleepy. And, let's see here. I wanted to also say, oh yeah, Brian, I'm sorry that your laptop hates you, but you're a good friend of ours, and we're glad that you came, even if you were late. The good news is you can watch this streaming on demand in a few different places, but definitely over on YouTube. Owen, anything you'd like to share? Anything going on in your world that you want to make sure the world knows about?
Pardon me. I've got my Patreon going as always. If you like seeing me do stuff on social media and my blog, that's patreon.com/Owen Casey Stevens, all run together. And I've got a Ko-fi, which is specifically ko-fi.com/Owen Casey Stevens, all run together. And the thing with the coffee is that it also has pictures of my housemate's increasingly popular and photogenic cat, Alphonse Lord Tubbington of Sausage on Chalk of the Order of the Big Biter. So
handsome cat.
if you are a fan of his chonkship, there are a bunch of pictures in the gallery there. And you can send me money, right? You're free to send me money. You don't have to. None of the pictures are behind a paywall. His chonkship would not allow that. But if you want to, if you're an Alphonse fan, which Duke apparently is, there's a bunch of Alphonse pics there.
Nice. And the cat stuff is really just icing on the cake. Ultimately, we just want to make sure that everybody that's that wants to give that love and support, they can do so, and we'll include links to the stuff that Owen's talking about. And one thing I recommend, if you're like, who is this Owen Casey Stevens? Why is he on my screen? I don't know why they're talking like that, but do a Google search and you will be like, wow. I mean, you've got books and you're in wikis and these are some top shelf. I mean, you've got a.
Last time I checked, I believe it is 3 million professional paid words of gaming in print.
So that is remarkable. That's why we love hanging out with you.
I guess it's not all in print anymore. I'm going to have to recalculate based on what's out of print. Dang.
Oh, no. That's old.
Out there, right? It's not all in print, but a lot of it's available as PDFs.
And if you were to guess how many words just spoken,
I would be wrong. If I were to guess, I would be wrong.
I'm imagining quite a few.
I'd have to figure. I mean, first of all, whatever the answer is, it's going to be too many, and I will be embarrassed. So I'll perhaps not ever do that math. But I mean, There's the Demi-Playment of Gaming. That's like 54 1-hour episodes with me and my friend Steve, which is still on YouTube. So you can look that up, Demi-Plane of Gaming. I've done a couple of things with Stan, which all stopped, not because of him, but because of me, because I get tired and go to sleep, as you all saw me yawning just a minute ago. There's a fair number of seminars. I was one of the co-hosts on the Starfinder game from the No Direction podcast network. I played Quundle on the Oblivion Oath podcast. That is still up. And Luis Loza, one of the developers at Paizo, does a Pathfinder 2nd Edition adventure where I play Saren Pius, musician at law. So those are all currently available somewhere, likely YouTube.
And I gotta say, we'll end on this. A fabulous tweet, one of my most favorites. Some mimics
are bigger than others. Yeah, and I've got the Twitters and the Facebookses, which and a blog, owenkcstevens.com, all of which have content from time to time.
Well, my friend, thank you for hanging out for this hour. I know that, we put so much energy into this that we kind of get to the end and we're like, I want to take a nap. And so I shall let you go. I shall say also unto the chat, good Thursday to you. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out, for having fun, for your great questions. Do send us a note. Let's play it at greenronin.com if you've got thoughts, dreams, hopes, aspirations, comments, a rash, you need some help with love. We are here for all of it.
If the pictures from my social media that Troy's showing you is giving you nightmares, by all means, let him know.
Please do. We are also dream interpreters. I will say, Owen, have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye now.
Bye, folks.